Morning. Padayon kita sa Ezekiel. So we'll continue on Ezekiel. So this will be like the second part, but sa tawag ni. We will end Ezekiel here. Uh, last time, last Wednesday, I introduced Ezekiel sa inyo. Ang pinaka-feature yun niya is 90 times over na mention ng Son of Man. The Son of Man is also a title given to Jesus the Messiah, Christ, when he came here to earth. It shows the paradoxical nature niya. He was both God and man. And the Son of Man is really talking about his humanity as being incarnate. So Ezekiel was somehow a preview of the Messiah, Son of Man. He was a messenger, a prophet, pero dili basta-basta ang mensahe nga dala niya, dala ni Ezekiel. So Son of Man ang tawag sa iya. In fact, very interesting kay yung lagi ang Ginoo, the blood of the people will be on your hands. And that's very telling of Jesus because we know that Jesus who had no sin, even though he was sinless, but he became sin. So the blood of all of us, humanity, was on him so that he will bring it on the cross and then we could have the righteousness of Christ. So Ezekiel actually is very messianic. So atong tanawan nga libro is very dark. Yes, the story is very dark, very heavy, but because it was talking about the Messiah, the Son of Man. So si Ezekiel mo tawag siya, Son of Man, Son of Man, Son of Man, tell Israel, Son of Man, tell the nations. So mo perminti ang sulti sa iyang ngalan. But today, very historical. Kini ato when you look at it, it's very historical. Yes, prophetical of what's going to happen to Israel, especially their exile in Babylon, and that they could not escape it, and they have to come under it. Okay, but it's very historical. Kinahitabo na, and what happened is at the latter part of Ezekiel, there was a promise of restoration. They will be brought back to Israel. Actually, if you see it in chapter 40, the talks of restoration begins na. Talks about, no, chapter 39, the talks of restoration already begins. Story ng restoration. And then in chapter 40, there's a talk of the new temple. To the temple that was naguba when Babylonians came. The Lord wants it to be restored. And in fact, the division of the land, ang buhaton nila sa pagbalik nila, iandam na si Ginoo, and that's until the end of Ezekiel. So that's the story of Ezekiel actually. And yes, it happened. They were able to go back. So it was telling them that they could not escape Babylon, but that the Lord had plans. This is Jeremiah 29:10 and 11. That one of these days God is going to bring them back to Israel and restore Israel back to them. And God told them what to do, how to rebuild the temple, how to go about with the division of the land. So back to zero sila, di ba? God is always going back to zero. When he allowed the flood to come during the time of Noah, he was back to zero. And now the same thing here, going back to zero. So it's both telling them what will happen in Babylon and then the restoration of coming back. So may tabuan ni, the next prophets will pick up what happened. Then we will see ang restoration dayon. So, maula na mensahe ni Ezekiel. And actually, right now, it's very historical. Sa ato, looking at it, it's very historical. But I want to discuss, actually, this is very heavy. Even I myself, lisod itulon kini nga mensahe. Especially in Ezekiel chapter 16. It is a description of who Israel is kinsa sila ang Judah. And I believe it's also a description of us. Dili enough sa akong tanaw ang pag-ingon nga maksasala ang tao. That's very general. Pero the point is, dautan ngayon kita mga katauhan. Dautan ngayon ang Israel, ang Judah. Especially sa ilang pagkawalay pagtuo sa Ginoo. So ingon din chapter 16, another message came to me from the Lord, Son of man, here it is again. Confront Jerusalem with her detestable sins. Give her this message from the sovereign Lord. You are nothing but a Canaanite. Your father was an Amorite and your mother a Hittite. On the day you were born, no one cared about you. Your umbilical cord was not cut, and you were never washed, rubbed with salt, and wrapped in cloth. No one had the slightest interest in you. No one pitied you. No one cared for you. On the day you were born, you were unwanted, dumped in a field, and left to die. Very heavy words coming from God. So, ang heading actually din is Jerusalem, an unfaithful wife. So again, kini silang Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they were contemporaries with the prophets Hosea. Okay? And I think partly, I don't remember the other prophets, pero mga contemporary sila. But anyway, pareha ang storya, di ba, sa Hosea, talking about uh, Prophet Hosea, ang ipaminyo siya kang Gomer was a prostitute. So kini, it gets us uncomfortable actually. I know you are used to the message of telling us how God loves us. Yes, it's true. But on the other side of the coin, on the other side of the story, we have here God describing who we are, and that our natural tendency is really to look for other gods somewhere else rather than God. Mao gayud ang tao. That's why it's a heavy message actually. Bugat ka mensahe mga igsoon. Lisod kay tunlon. So ingon din ni moral mong bata nga walay gusto sa inyo ha. Walay naglimpyo sa inyo, walay nagtabon gipasagdan nang mo. I'll just read it. In verse 6, but I came by and saw you there, helplessly kicking about in your own blood. As you lay there, I said, live, and I helped you to thrive like a plant in the field. You grow up and became a beautiful jewel. Your breast became full and your body hair grew, but you were still naked. And when I passed by again, I saw that you were old enough for love. So I wrapped my cloak around you to cover you, nakedness, and declare my marriage vows. I made a covenant with you, says the sovereign Lord, and you became mine. So God had to remind them where they came from. They came from mud. Galing sa putik sa Tagalog pa. Unwanted, nobody wants you. But then when I passed by, I saw that you were young. Nobody wants you. Nobody takes care of you. And I passed by again. I saw that you were adult. You were ready for love. That's why I came. I loved you. I married you. And you were mine. So klaro ang ginawa na. So why does the Lord have to remind them this? This is a relationship, actually. Real to know it's a relationship. But the more I read this one, the more we understand this is a one-way relationship. Again, who when we think highly of ourselves, we are entitled, right? But this one takes away all the entitlement that we have when we are told by God Himself that that's who we are. Because there's really a big gap, a big kasam chasm, dako kayo nga gap sa ato sa tao o Dios. That's the reality. Okay? But then even though there was this big gap, langit at lupa talaga ang gap, the Lord still choose to love us and to make us mine. So, dili ni siya ideal marriage like when you get married, you have to say, I have an ideal wife or an ideal husband. Diba? Uh, but this is not like that story. This is a story of somebody who was so unwanted, unloved, left out, but then God chose to unite Himself, to bind Himself to that person, and then marry, and then call her mine because we are pictured as the bride of Christ, the bride of the Messiah. So this is actually a one-way relationship. It's not a poster relationship that you have, di ba, when our favorite mga artista magminyo, malipay ta, uy, bagay gid sila, gwapo, gwapa. Bagay gid sila. Dili inana. Dili, kini nga kaminyo, may kuntag, One-sided kaayo ni. But the point here is that God chose to love us despite of who we are. God chose to love Israel and Judah despite of who they were. They were going after other gods. They were going after other husband. Because there's this picture of really intimacy. And that's why grabe ang kasing-kasing sa Ginoo na buwak dayon when man continue to go after other gods, like to say it, to choose not to believe on him. So it really breaks his heart. That's why I believe God is just expressing himself here. Nga, nanabiyan mo sa tinuod lang. Okay? Pero gigugmata mo, I chose to love you and make you mine. So, it's also a reminder for all of us. And I think I believe this is where we appreciate grace. When we really know, sa tao gani, uh, we have to look deep inside us. Actually, my problema sa religion, religion builds us up. But actually, the gospel does not. The gospel tears us down so that we could look outside of us and we could look at the righteousness Christ gives us. Okay, at first it tears it down. When you are not aware of your own pagkadautan, okay, kung dili gid ka aware sa imong kaulang pagkadautan, I think you don't know yourself, di ba? Really, the realization of the meditation is that if we look deep within us, we will see nothing but kahugaw. Di ba mo yung say, the Lord knows my heart. Ginoo kabalo. Yes, He knows it. It's very dirty. It's full of jealousy. It's full of unbelief. It's full of things that you don't want others to know. Okay, that's the real you. But despite of that real you, okay, God chose to love you. God chose to say, "You are mine." God chose to marry us, even though this is not a poster marriage, a poster wedding. This is not about an ideal wife, an ideal husband. Yes, Jesus, He's the ideal husband, but we are not the ideal wife. We have a lot of shortcomings. But He chose to love us. Di ba ana ang gugma? Gugma is like that. It's not like what you could get. It's not like give and take. No, it's not give and take. It's just a one-way direction love. And it's a decision to love that person. Ana man give it the picture. And that's what God did. That's what Christ did. Di ba? He chose to really love us despite of our being dili bagay. And I don't know what's with us that He really loves us, but He really loves us. Mao lang gid ang punto. And He chose to love us, to give Himself for us, to keep us pure until He comes and takes us home with Him, to be married with Him forever. So there's this picture here, Ezekiel 16. It's very long, but when we read this one, we will really see a description of who we are, the true description of who we are, and a description of the bride, of the groom, of God who loves us, that despite of our sinfulness, despite sa itong pagkadautan, He chose to love us and to get married to us. And of the day, to call us mine. But God had to, tao gani, God had to let Israel experience exile uh, because the reality is that He is still God. He is holy. The reality that Israel will see themselves that they have really fallen short of the glory of God. The reality of experiencing the faithfulness of God even though in exile. They had to experience that one. But God said, there is hope. I will restore you back. I will bring you back. I will build back again. And that's the message here in Ezekiel. So, again, Ezekiel for us now is very historical. The events already happened. They were taken to Babylon. And then later on, they were returned to Israel. They started anew. And we will see that in the next prophets. So for now, that's the message of Ezekiel. It's about the Son of Man and then the love of God towards us. Even though we are sinful, He chose to get married with us, to have this relationship with us, to call us His. So the lesson again, even for us right now, if we choose not to believe in God, This is not about going to church or being active. We cannot do that anymore, really. This is about the decision to really believe in God, to say, to trust Him daily. If we do not choose to do that, then of course we will get into trouble. So the encouragement is really to trust in Him, to depend on Him, because He is faithful to see us through. Okay, to really know who we really are, to see how how wrecked we are, how sinful we are, but still the Lord chooses to love us. That's the real love, people. So until then, I'll see you 9 in the morning, and we could talk more about these things.